we think of Charles talking about his grandchildren, the first thing you think of is the Waleses.
Yeah.
But of course, because he doesn't have that connection to the Sussex grandchildren at all. So you don't even think now, I wonder which grandchildren he's thinking about.
Yeah.
That, and the fact that maybe he didn't think of that when he was doing that speech. Do you think that crossed his mind, or how will people perceive it if I say grandchildren? Or maybe it's just now so written out of the narrative, as they say.
I think you're right, that your assessment is right. When he says grandchildren, most people here would first and foremost think of the ones that he's seen with, on Buckingham Palace balconies at the big moments. And that's not Archie and Lily. Welcome to the Royals with me, Roya and Kate.
And me, Kate Mancy.
So we're going to be discussing the Japanese state visit. And we were there at Buckingham Palace last night, weren't we, Kate?
We were. And it was a truly splendid affair, as you would expect.
And we'll have more on the news surrounding Princess Anne's accident in due course, and how horses have been such a part of her life over the years. How to start when there's so much to talk about?
Chronologically? Geographically?
Let's do both, Kate. And the Royal Week started at Wembley.
Go Swifties!
Now, I had a lot of love for this story, and not just the timing of it.
I used to think that on a Sunday newspaper, and anything clicked over kind of past 7 p.m. on a Friday.
Yes.
It's in my time. It's in my pitch now. Well, and I did think of you on Friday night.
Friday night.
We got it in late, though. We did get it in late.
Well done.
Thank you.
William's 42nd birthday. We thought all the news of William's 42nd birthday last week was going to be that lovely picture that the household put out, taken by the Princess of Wales, of William and George, Charlotte and Louis leaping over a sand dune
into the unknown
in Norfolk.
Looking joyous. The children were looking joyous. He looked a bit fearful.
Sweet message. Happy birthday. We all love you so much, Papa.
Although,
lovely.
I have to say, it does great on me. I do. Yeah, it was
you don't
lovely.
like the Papa?
No. I mean, and also if my husband ever calls me mummy, he would never would, because I'd divorce him.
I do know. I know him and I don't think that's going to happen.
But you know what I mean?
Okay.
But it was sweet. Sorry. Yeah.
Memo for William and Catherine. Anyway, we thought that was rather lovely, and everyone went to town on the pictures. And then Friday night, people's phones started whirring, didn't they, with unconfirmed reports that William was actually not celebrating down the pub with his favourite pint of cider, but that he was with the kids at Taylor Swift, at Tay-Tay, at Wembley, the other big news event of the week. And there was sort of no confirmation officially that night, because if they were there, it was private time, wasn't it?
It was private time. Yes.
Private time is very private when it comes to...
When you're shaking your booty in front of thousands of people at Wembley.
But then what emerged on Saturday morning, as I was trotting round Hyde Park, my phone, which I didn't touch because I'm in control of a horse, was whirring away, and I thought, hey-ho, what's this? And there was just some spectacularly wonderful, highly entertaining footage of William dad dancing, shaking some moves.
Quite not dissimilar, actually, to the moves Prince Louis has clearly inherited when he was shaking it.
Yes.
Shaking his little bod, Trooping the Colour.
There he was at Wembley Stadium in a box, but jiving away to Shake It Off, Taylor Swift's very famous hit. And I thought to myself, even if we don't get a picture of them there, this is just going to write itself, this piece.
Let's get a blurry screen grab of that on page 3.
Let's get a screen grab of that. Let's embed that video onto the Times website, make myself a cup of tea, and I'll just have a lot of fun writing this, which I did. But then, joy of joys,
the selfies.
Just bit of messaging with Kensington Palace. Well, we don't know. And I was thinking, this could be really good if we get my picture editor said on WhatsApp, if we get that picture, my head will explode with happiness. And a few minutes later, I did make his head explode with happiness when not one but two pictures.
Because first we had the kind of selfie. It looked like someone was taking a picture of them taking the selfie, which obviously as a journalist, you always go, well, I want to see that selfie.
Yeah.
And almost as if they had prepared their social media presence around the subject. Almost as if they had done, it's all been choreographed as such. Within a few moments, we had Taylor's version, as she says on, when you stream her music, Taylor's version of the picture, which was them all kind of grinning into the into the camera, the selfie itself.
Yes.
With mate.
And Charlotte...
She called him mate, M8.
Charlotte and George were with William on his 42nd birthday. Meant to have been a treat for the kids. But if you look at that picture, and
really?
if you study the video of William dancing, I'd hazard a guess that he's a bigger Swiftie than his kids.
Yeah. And on his birthday as well. Oh, I'm just doing it for the kids. And the picture, he looked quite... It's the same kind of expression Charles used to have when he met people like Diana Ross when he was younger and things like that. It's that kind of like...
Yeah.
I'm going to change my name to K8 now.
K8. I like what you've done there. But this wasn't William's first encounter with Tay-Tay, was it?
No.
Because he had actually got up on stage years ago at a Centrepoint fundraiser, which is the charity which he's patron homelessness charity at
John
Kensington
Bon
Palace.
Jovi.
Yes, and he recounted this a couple of years ago doing a Time to Walk podcast where he recalled...
Don't plug another podcast, right?
So no, I shouldn't, should I? Ours is better. Much. It's not a podcast. It's called a walking Apple Fitness walking experience. Sitting with Taylor Swift, and John Bon Jovi was just about to get on stage and sing "Living on a Prayer," and Taylor touched me on the arm and said, "Come on, William, let's sing."
And led him onto the stage like a puppy.
Even though he's not known for his singing voice, I think it's fair to say
It was the puppy dog element of it all. I thought was kind of slight cringe.
He did get up on stage.
He's a big fan.
So I think it's fair to say William's a big fan of Tay-Tay.
It was nice to see that.
It was.
It was nice to see him,
I thought
cutting loose a bit.
Do you know what I thought was interesting? There were a lot of celebrities there on
a lot of freebie VIPs.
Friday, Saturday and Sunday.
Keir Starmer was there.
And I didn't see...
Other politicians are available.
Yes. I didn't see Taylor Swift put out any other photos of other well-known people apart from William, George and Charlotte. And that's quite interesting, I think, in terms of how she sees them. Because whenever we talk about the royal family, they're globally known, but there's always a sort of slight sense that some members of the royal family, quite a lot of them, don't like the idea of being celebrities. But when you have the likes of Tom Cruise and huge stars that there over the weekend, the only picture that Taylor Swift put out was with Prince William, Prince George and Princess Charlotte. I think that's quite interesting.
Yes, it is. I think because they meet so many famous people, don't they? People like Taylor Swift and Tom Cruise. But there can't be that many people that they have that kind of celebrity kind of, oh my goodness, experience. But when they meet members of the royal family, that is the reaction.
What do you think was the reasoning behind that going from sort of private time to, okay, you can have a picture?
I think it struck me that they were quite sensible about, how could it possibly be truly private
when there's 80,000 people
when there's that many people there? And I think they knew on the Friday night that they obviously had this plan to put out this picture the following day in their kind of schedule, social media schedule.
Yes.
So I think then it's sort of kind of a shrug, isn't it, that it's kind of public, semi-public. And, watch this space. Could Taylor Swift be helpful to William in his Earthshot Prize or something like that, take on some sort of role for him? That wouldn't hurt at all, would it? So it could be kind of this kind of mutually beneficial
with her
mateship.
Many millions of followers on social media and her,
exactly.
her empire. No, it'd be helpful, yeah. You didn't get a ticket then, Kate?
I feel like I'm the only person in the country who didn't get to see Taylor Swift.
I didn't get to see Taylor Swift.
Well, if she's listening, maybe we could... She's coming back, isn't she?
Come on our podcast in August, Tay-Tay.
I'll settle for a couple of tickets, even at the back. But I did see you, Roya, another hot ticket.
It was very hot.
It was very hot. It felt about 40 degrees on Horse Guards Parade on Tuesday for another musical spectacular, which was the official welcoming for the inward state visit for the Emperor and Empress of Japan.
Yes, it was a hot ticket in that it was boiling standing on Horse Guards Parade. But finally, the Japanese state visit got underway because, of course, there was so much uncertainty over whether or not it would happen once the general election was called, as we discussed in our previous podcast episode.
Indeed.
So the Emperor and Empress arrived and they had their official welcome, didn't they, on horse guards, but William had gone to collect them from Claridge's. He'd done the sort of meet and greet and then escorted them onto horse guards, where funny old scene with, Charles and Camilla, the King and Queen, and then Rishi Sunak walked across with James Cleverly and David Cameron. And you just sort of saw him and you thought, if if he doesn't win the election and the polls are right, that is really sort of his last big moment publicly, you know, as the sort of statesman prime minister, isn't it?
He did seem to be enjoying it.
You thought he did?
Yeah. I'm smiling at you because I wondered if you were going to mention Prince William being late. Because he went to Claridge's to pick up the Emperor and Empress, which is the hotel they were staying at. And then they did come around quite a few minutes late, and I did feel for the King and Queen. It was scorching. Okay, they were under shade.
Under canopy. We were. You were wearing a hat, cleverly. Well done. But I think the official line was that was traffic, and that he'd actually arrived on time. Oh, you're unconvinced. Kate's unconvinced. Let it be noted.
It was kind of it was delayed, wasn't it? The fact there was a question over whether it would happen at all, and then it was delayed anyway because in his speech at the banquet, the Emperor said, you know, that actually it was the late Queen who had invited him initially 5 years beforehand, and he had said, you know, obviously that it had been delayed because of the coronavirus pandemic. Then we had this new date, everyone was looking forward to it, and then could it be delayed because of the general election? But what they've managed cleverly to do is just to make sure that there's any of those kind of political elements, like a visit to Downing Street, which would probably have happened, that was taken out of the schedule. Although there are kind of protocols and everything has to be run past the Cabinet Office, which meant that, of course, Sunak, as the current Prime Minister, was there with Home Secretary, Private and Foreign Secretary as well.
It was but you did. I mean, although it was slightly altered because of that, we did get the full pomp and pageantry of, you know, the carriages, the sovereign's escort of the household cavalry. It was lovely to see them again. We saw them on trooping. But what was quite striking were the images of the King and Queen and Prince William all going back from Horse Guards to Buckingham Palace, down the Mall with the sovereign's escort of the House of Cavalry, and Empress Masako with her mask on, because
she's allergic, isn't
there
she?
may have been a lot of beautiful House of Cavalry horses in full state kit, but she's allergic to horses.
Because she had the mask on at the procession, but when actually we saw her in the palace, she'd removed it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, you know, people might have looked at that and thought that it was a kind of, you know, holdover from COVID or something.
No.
But she's had her own health issues. You know, she did step down from public duties for a while. She has this kind of anxiety, stress-related condition. But she has started to come back to more public duties more recently. And I think they've seen it as a really enjoyable trip so far as well, because they got here on Saturday, even though the official start of the state visit wasn't till Tuesday. They've had some sort of downtime. They'll go on Friday to visit Oxford University, where they've both studied in the past. And it's an opportunity, I think, for them to, you know, see something different. So I think they do seem to be enjoying it.
We, on Tuesday night, we were lucky. You and I were at Buckingham Palace, weren't we, for the state banquet? And we got a little sneak peek preview, walk through the way it's all set out, the way, you know, it's absolutely extraordinary. The gilt that's laid out, the flowers that are laid out, the table settings. And as we were walking through this magnificent setting of the state banquet, what struck me, Kate, wasn't just the magnificent apples of Hesperides candelabrum. It wasn't just the beautiful roses from Buckingham Palace Gardens and Windsor Castle. It wasn't just the special Japanese maple trees that were so beautifully set out, which we were told, of course, would be upcycled and repurposed later. And it wasn't just the, drum roll, coronation service or the grand service originally ordered by George IV. No. Do you know what it was, Kate?
What was your favourite bit, Roya?
What struck me the most, Kate, was the seating arrangement of the King's private secretary, Sir Clive Alderton, seated next to a Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer. Because, of course, the palace and the royal family are always above politics. But I thought it was very interesting that he wasn't sat next to the Prime Minister.
No, he's cosy. His right-hand man is cozying up to the potential future leader. Well, quite. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I think that was definitely
There were some interesting guests, weren't there?
There were some interesting guests, and I thought
there was a sushi
diplomatically, and a former astronaut, and I think that diplomatically it was really interesting, given that we're in this general election campaign. So randomly, apparently, you know, this is all very it's all part of protocol, as the palace would say, but it did look odd that in that royal procession going in, we had Akshata Murti, the Prime Minister's wife, walking in with the royal procession, but he wasn't. So he was already in the room. And though they said this is protocol and such like, and it's just the way the tables are laid out, it was interesting to see, I think. Then you also had Ed Davey there, the Liberal Democrat leader. You had Stephen Flynn, the SNP politician. So there were sort of nods to all the different parties, I think.
It was all on a very level playing field, wasn't it?
Yeah, but those things are always fascinating. It's always the people.
Yeah.
And then you walk in, so as journalists, we get this kind of walk in, walk round to have a look at who's sitting where, the little table plans. But the thing that you can't see on the pictures, of course, is that smell that hits you of the flowers.
They were amazing.
Were everywhere.
I thought they were the best.
Extraordinary. They were definitely the best I'd ever seen.
I don't mean to speak ill of the late Queen's flower choices, but they were so beautiful, the flowers, and they just had a general sort of Charles quite wild vibe. Do you know what I love? This is going to sound quite niche, but they were silver dishes all up the tables, just piled high with juicy peonies.
Yeah, the peonies were great.
They just looked like you wanted to kind of pluck them off and eat them.
At Charles's peonies.
Sounds interesting. And there was, of course, no Princess of Wales, no Princess Royal, Princess Anne. So 2 senior members of the royal family who would have been there, not there.
There's a sort of reshuffle at the last minute. We'll move that person's name
Duchess of
tag.
Edinburgh made the top table.
She was on the top table, wasn't she?
Seated next to...
Even though the Duke of Edinburgh was, sort of
bit
booted further down.
I know.
No, it was a real kind of promotion for her.
Yeah.
One thing I thought was funny surrounding the whole Japanese inward state visit was all the acronyms that we hear for our job. So MRF, members of the royal family, and TMs for their majesties. And yesterday they were all kind of tripping over themselves verbally, sort of going, we've got the TMs. And I mean, their majesties, but I'm not meaning their majesties, I'm meaning our majesties, because, of course, normally when you have a state visit, you have some sort of head of state coming in.
President.
Who's not a member of a royal family, but because you had an alternative royal family, we had them saying our majesties and their majesties, which
it was overly majestic, wasn't it?
It was very majestic.
Not talking about a wine shop.
And the speeches were great as well. I mean, I think they've known each other for so long. I actually read the Emperor's memoirs, The Thames and I, because he came in 1983, stayed to 1985, studied at Merton College in Oxford, and studied the very niche subject of the 18th century Thames waterways, and is quite a buff on the subject. Went back to Japan, wrote a book about that. But then he wrote memoirs about his time in Britain, which is really funny, about how he learnt how to order a pint in a pub, and he was quite nervous to do so. And then he talks about his fly fishing with the prince and the Balmoral picnics.
They're good mates.
And they are good mates, and it came across really well, didn't it? I think
it's one of the reasons why, although, it's technically a decision for government whether or not that state visit went ahead during the election period, but I think the king was very keen that it should happen and not be postponed again, because he holds the emperor in such high esteem.
Mm-hmm. Even in that day when we looked around the Buckingham Palace display of the artefacts from the Royal Collection Trust, which were shown out, that anything sort of Japanese related was sort of wheeled out so that everybody could look at them. And there was his book that he'd written about the Thames, and Charles had written kind of, a foreword to his memoirs, and there was a sort of signed copy of the book that he had given to Charles when they were both princes. And now they're running the show, and it's nice of them. It goes back decades, but this is the kind of proper soft diplomacy, isn't it, of the royal family? Yeah. This is the thing, these enduring relationships.
The ties that bind is the phrase, isn't it?
You have politicians that come and go, but these are ingrained relationships that tie the two countries in a way that you can never
politics can't do.
Expect. Yeah. There was a few kind of jokes I thought fell slightly flat.
Which were the jokes you thought fell flat,
All
Kate?
the jokes.
In the speech?
I think sometimes it's quite funny in speeches, but I thought that sort of Pokemon speech...
I wonder who wrote that speech.
He made a reference to the Pokemon... he's talking about his fly fishing and how they used to go fly fishing together in Scotland and when they were younger, and then he said, well, I'm not very good at it nowadays, not like Pokemon, you've got to catch them all, and made a reference to his grandchildren. And I just thought, I did think, well, of course, and that's interesting as well, that we think we think of Charles talking about his grandchildren, the first thing you think of is the Waleses.
Yeah.
But of course, because he doesn't have that connection to the Sussex grandchildren at all. So you don't even think now, I wonder which grandchildren he's thinking about.
Yeah.
That, and the fact that maybe he didn't think of that when he was doing that speech. Do you think that crossed his mind, or how will people perceive it if I say grandchildren? Or maybe it's just now so written out of the narrative, as they say.
Oh, that's a deep question. I think you're right that your assessment is right. When he says grandchildren, most people here would first and foremost think of the ones that he's seen with, on Buckingham Palace balconies at the big moments. And that's not Archie and Lily. But we know that, both sides would love that relationship to be closer and stronger. But the distance means it just isn't. It's a shame. Now, a very notable absence from the state banquet on Tuesday night was Princess Anne. After the worrying news we heard on Monday about the incident that happened at Gatcombe Park estate on Sunday. So what do we know? We know that the Princess Royal was walking on Sunday evening inside Gatcombe, her estate. And we know that she suffered a concussion and minor injuries. And we know that horses were in the vicinity. And from what Buckingham Palace told us, her medical team said that her injuries and the concussion are consistent with horses.
Yeah, being either hit by a horse's head or its legs.
Or hooves or legs. She was taken to hospital straight away. Air ambulance came, but she didn't use it. You can imagine.
Well, we can read between the lines on that one.
Giving them short shrift when that
Indeed.
air ambulance landed. And she was taken to Southmead Hospital in Bristol, where she has been, as we speak, she's still there. She's had visitors. She's had Tim Lawrence, her husband, come and see her. Zara's been to see her. And Tim Lawrence has said a couple of times when he's come outside and spoken to the media that she's recovering slowly but surely. Quite an incident. It was quite a shock because we sort of, Anne is she's such a sort of stalwart, steady, stoic presence. So you just think when Anne's taken into hospital,
Must be serious.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the fact that she was treated at the scene, that both the air ambulance was scrambled, that the police helicopter was scrambled, that she was walking within that they made it clear that she was walking within the security perimeter when they first released the news on Monday. The inference being it wasn't an attack from somebody. It clearly seems to be some sort of incident with the horse, despite the fact that she's a very experienced equestrian.
Well, she wasn't riding.
She wasn't riding, she was on foot. But yeah, I think it is worrying. I think this is somebody who, consistently tops the tables for the hardest working royal. There's a lot of public affection for her.
Yeah.
And she's now cancelled the trip to Canada. So she was due to go to Canada on Sunday and Monday for a 2-day visit.
I mean, she typically had another sort of 11 billion engagements this week, didn't she? Which she had a very packed diary, which she had to postpone.
And the Canada trip is significant as well because she's going there in a kind of military capacity. There was supposed to be the remains of a First World War soldier repatriated in Canada during this ceremony, an unnamed soldier. So it was going to be quite a poignant event for the Canadians. And I think Princess Royal was obviously keen to go. And as you say, there's like a whole list of stuff that she's expected to do and had been planning to do throughout July, right up until the beginning of August. That now seems to be hanging in the balance. And yeah, this news certainly was, I think, a shock to a lot of people.
She will not be swayed from her love of horses by a kick, will she? Or even concussion. This is a woman who has spent most of her life around horses, enjoying them, riding them, competing at the highest level, competing at the Olympics, competing in all sorts of other huge competitions. She, and we saw she's like her mother. I mean, she is, horses run in her blood. And we were just talking about Anne the other day, weren't we, on Trooping the Colour when she was riding Naughty Noble. You can just imagine Anne sort of, okay, first of all, you can imagine Anne absolutely loathing being the centre of attention and media attention. She'll have really disliked the fact that while her brother was hosting a state visit, a very high-profile state visit, Anne was the main news of the day because she loathes being the centre of attention.
And she would have wanted to be there to represent the family.
And she would have wanted to be there. She will definitely, I think, fingers crossed, when she comes out of hospital soon, I think you can imagine her being around horses again very soon because
totally.
She, there's such a huge part of her life. She will not be, she shall not be put off by a rogue hoof.
I agree. I think you're absolutely right. I think we can even look to the past. So in April 1976, she was knocked off a horse. It fell on top of her. She broke a vertebrae in her back, was knocked unconscious. And just a few months later, she was competing in the Montreal Olympics, an equestrian event, after such a difficult fall. So this is the spirit of the woman who just keeps getting up and getting on with it. Age 73, though, head wounds not to be taken lightly. So I think everyone's wishing her well.
Abundance of caution, I'm sure she's being treated by her excellent medical team.
That means, of course, that Princess Anne won't be there for Scotland Week when they go to Holyrood next week. But someone I know, sitting very close to me, will be going to Scotland, won't you, Roya?
Well, I am going to Scotland tomorrow.
Very good.
Yes, I'm going to Scotland tomorrow. I'm quite looking forward to this trip, actually. I'm going to Scotland tomorrow because Balmoral is being opened up to the public for the first time next week. And I've got a little sneak preview for the Royal Rota.
That'll be brilliant.
I'm really looking forward to it, actually.
Balmoral's great, especially this time of year when it's super hot and muggy. It's actually...
Will it be in Scotland, though?
But that's what I mean. It won't be, so it'll be nice.
Exactly.
It'll be cool. That's why the Queen used to love going there for holidays.
She did say, I think all her family used to say it was where she was at her happiest.
Having her barbecues and her picnics.
I think it's interesting that they are opening up more of it because of course you can see, I think you can just see the ballroom or very small bits of it now, but a decision's been taken to open more of it up. And I think it's already sold out, apparently.
Not surprised.
Yeah. So I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about next week when I've been up and seen it.
Indeed.
And then, of course, we've got the King and Queen Holyrood week. Well, it's just Holyrood 2 days, really, isn't it? They've crunched it down because he's got to come back for this small matter of the general election.
Well, yeah, he's got to be back in time
to welcome a Prime Minister.
If there's a clear winner, then on Friday they'll be going to Buckingham Palace and he'll be saying ta-ra to the old Prime Minister if it's a different person from the new Prime Minister. And if it's the new Prime Minister, Clive will be saying, oh, hello, mate. I saw you at the banquet.
You again, old chap.
M8. And I'm going to a banquet tonight, finally, despite the fact that
you're
yesterday...
going as a guest. Your grand thing.
The husband has been told he's not allowed to wear his flip-flops. So, white tie.
Is that right? You can't wear it with flip-flops as white tie?
Well, sort of... apparently not.
What are you wearing?
A long pink kind of flouncy dress. It's very on me, actually, but nice. I'll send you a picture.
Yeah, please do.